Hello everyone, this is Today in History. Today is Monday, January the 22nd, the 22nd day of 2024. There are 344 days left in the year. On this day in 1561, British statesman and philosopher Francis Bacon was born in York House, London. On this day in 1788, Romantic poet George Gordon, Lord Byron, is born this day in Aberdeen, Scotland. Despite his later fortune and title, Byron grew up in poverty and was burdened by a club foot. On this day in 1840, under the leadership of British statesman Edward G. Wakefield, the first British colonists to New Zealand arrived at Port Nicholson on Auckland Island. On this day in 1849, Swedish playwright, novelist, and short story writer August Strindberg, who combined psychology and naturalism in a new kind of European drama that evolved into expressionist drama, was born. On this day in 1879, pursuing American soldiers badly beat Cheyenne chief Dull Knife and his people as they made a desperate bid for freedom. In doing so, the soldiers effectively crushed the so-called Dull Knife outbreak. On this day in 1898, Sergei Eisenstein, a Russian film director and theorist known for such classics as Potemkin in 1925, Alexander Nevsky in 1938, and Ivan the Terrible, released in two parts, 1944 and 1958, was born. On this day in 1901, Queen Victoria, who reigned for more than 60 years, during which time the British Empire reached the apex of its power, died at age 81. On this day in 1904, influential ballet choreographer George Balanchine was born in St. Petersburg. On this day in 1905, in Russia, the revolution of 1905 begins when Tsarist troops opened fire on a peaceful group of workers marching to the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg to petition their grievances to Tsar Nicholas II, better known as Bloody Sunday. On this day in 1931, American singer and songwriter Sam Cooke, one of the most influential black vocalists of the post-World War II era, was born in Clarksdale, Mississippi. On this day in 1943, all Japanese resistance in Papua on the island of New Guinea, site of the important Allied base at Port Mozambique in World War II, ceased. On this day in 1973, former President Lyndon Baines Johnson dies in Johnson City, Texas, at the age of 64. Also on this day in 1973, in Kingston, Jamaica, the 24-year-old George Forman pulls off a stunning upset, defeating reigning champion Joe Frazier in 4 minutes and 35 seconds to win the heavyweight championship of the world. Also on this day in 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court issues one of its most momentous decisions, ruling in Roe v. Wade that a Texas statute criminalizing abortion in most instances violates a woman's constitutional right of privacy. On this day in 1980, in Moscow, Andrei Sakharov, the Soviet physicist who helped build the USSR's first hydrogen bomb, is arrested after criticizing the Soviet military intervention in Afghanistan. On this day in 1981, final portrait of John and Yoko is on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. After a shocking assassination of John Lennon, thousands of mourners gathered spontaneously outside his and Yoko Ono's Central Park West apartment building, the Dakota. On this day in 1984, during a break in the action of Super Bowl 18, audiences first see a commercial is now widely agreed to be one of the most powerful and effective of all time. Apple's 1984 spot featured a young woman throwing a sledgehammer through a screen on which a big brother-like figure preached about the unification of thought, got people around the United States talking and heralding a new age of Apple consumer technology and advertising. On this day in 1992, serving as a payload specialist aboard the Discovery space shuttle, Roberta Bondar became the first Canadian woman and the first neurologist to travel into space. On this day in 1998, one of the most notorious domestic terrorists in U.S. history, Theodore Kaczynski, the so-called Unabomber, who killed 3 people and injured 22 in 16 attacks between 1979 and 1995, was sentenced to 4 terms of life in prison without parole. On this day in 2003, the U.S. Census Bureau releases detailed statistics on race and ethnicity. First time such numbers have been been released since the 2000 census. The numbers show that the Hispanic population of the United States had increased by 4.7% since the last count, officially making Hispanics the largest minority group in the country. On this day in 2006, Evo Morales, a member of the Aymara indigenous group, was sworn in as president of Bolivia, becoming the first Indian to hold the office. On this day in 2008, Hollywood mourns a talented young actor's life cut tragically short after the body of 28-year-old Heath Ledger is found by his masseuse and housekeeper on the floor of his rented apartment in the Soho neighborhood of New York City. On this day in 2010, struggling with ratings, Conan O'Brien left The Tonight Show after hosting his last episode of the late-night television program. On this day in 2012, Joe Paterno, who is head coach at Penn State from 1966 to 2011, was one of the most successful coaches in the history of collegiate gridiron football, but whose final year was overshadowed by a sex abuse scandal involving a former assistant coach. Died at age 85. On this day in 2018, American writer Ursula K. Le Guin, who is best known for tales of science fiction and fantasy imbued with concern for character development and language, died at age 88. On this day in 2021, American professional baseball player Hank Aaron, one of the game's greatest hitters, died at age 86. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. Today is Monday, January the 22nd, the 22nd day of 2024. There are 344 days left in the year.